This is the perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah! Another myth bites the dust.
Hello, TPR Nation. This is Amber Kuhn from the Perfect RIA. Thank you for joining me on today's Fallout Friday, where I'll be covering the highlights and action items from this week's episodes. On Monday's episode, Matt and Micah talked about practice valuations. Matt said that practice valuation is something we all need to be aware of. It boils down to being intentional about what we're focused on and making sure that whatever milestone or benchmark we're aiming for is a real one and not something that somebody just made up. Micah talked about how you need to look at what is the real value that you have, and also what decision you're making that adds enterprise value and what takes away enterprise value. And that the best way to figure this out is through those real deals and finding out what our practice is actually being bought and sold for. He added that another benefit of looking at what would you do if you were selling is that it forces you to clean up and fix things and address things for your own efficiency. If Mike is looking at a practice that he's considering buying, one of the questions he's always asking is, does this pay for itself? Where's the value that he's getting, and can he get that from the P&L? He mentioned that you also have to look at the time aspect of doing this. If you're buying a practice elsewhere, you need to think about how would you actually manage it? How would you manage the team? And what about the clients? He said he'd probably need to double the time that he thinks it would actually take to run it. Matt and Micah talked about that they think that most valuations out there are really just made up. For the deals that happen, they want to know what the deal was, who was the buyer, and who was that seller, because currently none of the numbers out there are verified. The guys also spent some time talking about clients who are expecting an inheritance and how those clients want to plan based on a certain number and take distributions based on that. Matt said they will not account for it until that money comes through. Micah added that he'll give clients a few things to think about in this situation so that they're prepared and understand that they don't get 100% of their inherited money. So back to those practice valuations. What about advisors who have no interest in selling their practice? Matt said that a lot of this comes down to what are you actually measuring in your practice? He added that whatever you measure improves. Advisors will argue about their fee, but when Matt and Mike review what that number is, they said it's easy to get sucked into the story that you tell yourself, and then you just end up drinking your own Kool-Aid. Micah said that you need to be intentional. You should build to sell, but you should operate to live. He's very intentional about his succession plan, as well as how he's operating. Matt mentioned that they've talked to a lot of multi-generational advisors where the elder owns the practice and has this valuation, which is essentially the number that they need to retire. But the numbers don't actually support that, and they can end up being desperate for the sale. Matt added a word of warning that for anyone coming into a practice expecting it to transition, unless you have this ironclad and you have the ability to be financially secure independent of that practice, you should run away. That deal isn't going to work. Micah added that people haven't realized that they haven't saved enough, and it's still a math question at the end of the day. So if you're working in one of those practices and you're supposed to buy, you need to look to see if at the end of the day, does that math work? The guys wrapped up the episode by talking about those real numbers and to make sure that you're not looking at things through rose-colored glasses. Matt said the warning is that if someone is offering way more than what is normally being offered, you need to look at what's going on behind the scenes. And again, you need to track real numbers. Also, if you're selling and not leaving, you really need to dig into what's in that contract. Let's get into action items from Monday's episode. First, build to sell, but operate to live. You need to be hyper intentional about those numbers. And then remember that you always tell yourself stories and you always need to be aiming for something. Matt and Micah talk a lot about personal development and finding a practice that you want to achieve. So whatever your intentional target is, you need to be measuring the numbers to get there. You need to have real numbers and monitor those. And you need a system in place for this for someone, not you, to generate and put those numbers together. Lastly, please join us on March 29th for our next Nation Power session, the one big mistake advisors make. You can sign up by visiting theperfectra.com. On this week's What Works Wednesday, Matt was joined by his personal and professional coach, Baughman. Brett is a big proponent of morning routines and peak performance. He kicked off the episode by sharing that at some point in time, getting better is not just learning a new tool. It's why you're using the tool and how you're using the tool. He said that he was doing fundamental research where he wasn't just cheerleading and motivating people, but he was looking at backed scientific evidence and proof in results. He was looking at what are the key components of peak performance. Brett shared that you could be an entrepreneur, but you may not be feeling fulfilled, and that you're never going to reach your highest potential unless you're also biologically, psychologically, and emotionally tapped into what makes you work at your peak. He created a process called QP1, which is a daily morning routine where you're programming yourself to function, to think, to work at a higher level. Brett said that ideally with transcendental meditation, you should be doing 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the night. However, he said you could just do 5 to 10 minutes of meditation where you're doing 20 affirmations, going through your passions, and then listing out your gratitudes. He said it's checking those boxes, not just to say that you did them, but that they're fundamental pieces that you purposely chose to be there. Brett recommends that you do this within 5 to 10 minutes of waking up. You want to start your day internally, and then you can be proactive. And he said doing this will totally change your day because it instantly turns down your emotional meter, where then you can go into that strategic, objective thinking. Brett said that the simplest thing to do is to start with meditation. He said feelings do not dictate reality. They dictate your reality, and you don't want to let your emotions drive you. He said if you can commit to 5 minutes a day for 7 days, then you're going to start seeing those results and feeling better. And after this, you can start adding more and then looking at other things. And he said discipline is key. If you're consistent, then you will see those results. Brett also recommends that you set an intention for your day and for your week. He looks at passion and impact and then fulfillment. What is that biggest thing that will make the greatest positive impact? Brett also talked about the process of discovering your passions and that your passion is different from how you choose to execute your passion. He said the way that you become more fulfilled is by looking at another area of your life that you're not currently focusing on. Let's get into action items from Wednesday's episode. You can visit Brett's website, brettbaughman.com, and there's a ton of information that you can look into, and Brett recommends finding one thing over the next 7 days that you can use. Then challenge yourself to do 5 minutes of meditation every day. The more you do, the quicker you'll see those results. And lastly, remember that being physically fit and stressed is not a point of pride. You need to be relaxed and fit. Moving on to this week's Worlds to Conquer. This was an episode that you do not want to listen to if you just want to take the easy road or if you're ready to give up on your goals. Jamie shared that March is where all resolutions go to die. And this is a time where you can really learn who has grit or who's just given up and only dreams of having a different life. She reminded that everyone sets big goals at the end of the year, but you need to be checking in to see where you are in those goals. Jamie said success means doing consistently what other people do occasionally, and that all those people who will give up on their goals will blame it on something else. So you must be different and take different steps towards action so you don't fall into that same habit because that easy way is always there. So let's get into the items that Jamie shared, what you need to focus on in order to 10x your practice. First, you need to figure out where are you going and where do you want to get to. Jamie brought up how many times are you moving and hustling to try to get somewhere, but you don't even know where that place is because you haven't mapped out where you're going. She said if you're not walking the walk that you want to walk, then you won't double or 10x. You need to make a dramatic change in your life. Jamie brought up the power of reincarnated thoughts, that you can visualize what you want to see happen before it's even happened, and you can practice everything you want to see. And remember, success means doing consistently what others do occasionally. Second, once you visualize where you want to go, how do you get there? What are those steps? Look at tomorrow morning and what do you have to do? What are you putting into that morning success ritual? Then have a list of everything you need to get done that way. Jamie said there will always be more work and that's okay, but you need to prioritize the work that has to get done. For Jamie, she'll have a list on a piece of paper one side of what are things that will move the needle. She'll start those items first. Then on the second side will be other tasks, and those are the ones that she'll do towards the end of the day. At the end of the week, she'll look at all those items to see what are the ones that can only be done by her and what are some that can be done by someone else, and then she'll delegate those. Jamie said that 2xing and 10xing is totally possible. But in order to do so, you need to relinquish some of your control in order to get there. Let's get into action items from Thursday's episode. As a reminder, where are you going and how do you get there? Those are the two big things that you need to have in your head. So the first action is draw out where you're going and figure out what are your reincarnated thoughts. What can you stop and visualize in your mind right now? Now, this can't be vague. It needs to be very specific and detailed. Then second, write down the ways that you are going to fail. What are those things that can hijack or stop you from achieving greatness? TPR Nation, before I wrap up, I want to remind you about our upcoming Nation Power Session at the end of the month on March 29th. Matt and Michael will be talking about the one big mistake advisors make. Be sure to get signed up today by visiting theperfectri.com, or you can email us at lifestyle@theperfectri.com. That wraps up this week's recap. Thank you for joining me on today's Follow Up Friday. Be sure to give us 5 stars wherever you're enjoying this podcast and share this or any of our episodes with another advisor or a team member who you think might benefit from listening. And until next time, happy planning.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife.